let's talk about Brian Mbeumo. We know Manchester United are very interested in him. What's the latest on that, Andy?
Well, United have always been the favourites in this. There's no doubt about that. He's been keen from the off, and he made it clear that even if there's no European football involved, he feels it's an appropriate step up from Brentford. And of course, when Thomas Frank went to Tottenham, that put a little bit of a fly in the ointment, because straight away you look at the possibility of him going there. I think he's a player who would fit in very well at Tottenham, but it's never felt like Tottenham, especially after the purchase of Matthias Tell, even though he plays on the other side, it's been clear he's not a priority for Tottenham, particularly not at that price. Whereas United have come in with a fairly high opening bid. It's clear that they and Brentford are not miles apart on that. And he would be a massive plus to Manchester United in what they're trying to do next season. They've been a team that's been incredibly reliant on Bruno Fernandes. Clearly, they could do with another centre forward as well. But Mbeumo's ability to go past players, ability to score, and getting 20 Premier League goals playing for Brentford is not nothing. I think the money that's Brentford want is not unrealistic, and that's why United and Brentford aren't poles apart in what they want. So I would expect this to get done relatively quickly.
Yeah, reports today suggesting that Brentford are holding out for 62.5 million, which is what United paid Wolves for Matheus Cunha. So if we're arguing over a few million and it's clear Mbeumo wants to move, you see this one getting over the line?
Yeah, I think that's the most likely solution. And look, I think given that Ruben Amorim wants to make the most of the time that they have this season, the fact that they don't have any European football, it could be, in the short term, very valuable to him. He has said from the off that he needs time on the training pitch to work with the players, to get in their heads. And if he can get the team together, the squad together that he wants to go into next season with, the sooner the better, really. I think the fact that they've not been involved in the Club World Cup, they don't have any Europe next season, this should give Amorim and United a real chance to work on something, a chance to improve, which they need to do a lot, clearly. And to have Mbeumo on board early on, there's no reason why they shouldn't get that done. And it could be vital for them going into next season.
Yeah, and another position they want to strengthen, of course, is in goal. They're interested in Atalanta's keeper, aren't they, Carnesecchi? Yeah,
that's right. Marco Carnesecchi has been really, really good in this last season for Atalanta. And I think if you look at the sort of goalkeeper, not just Vicario, but the other sort of overseas goalkeepers who translate well to the Premier League. We saw Joan Garcia, who ended up leaving Espanyol for Barcelona, being linked with a ton of Premier League clubs in the last couple of months. It's clear that when you had, say, Hugo Lloris arriving in the Premier League, there was a sense that he needed to beef up. So now we're sort of cutting out the middleman and saying, okay, if we want a player to come from overseas to the Premier League, he's got to be built like a cupboard in the first place. And Carnesecchi is that. He's 6'5". He's quite thickly set as well. But I think the other side of that is important. The fact that he is someone who's been well developed over the years by Atalanta, came through the youth system, but they sent him out on a load of loans before he became the first choice goalkeeper, still only 24 now. And he's someone who can deal with all that physical attention that he's going to get in the Premier League, but at the same time is surprisingly agile for someone of his size. So he can get down and make saves in low and either corner, at his feet, as with his feet as well. And he's a goalkeeper who's only going to get better. So I think his distribution is pretty good. I think obviously what has been the main disappointment with Andre Onana is, I guess, the traditional goalkeeper stuff. We expected him to come and make Erik Ten Hag's distribution dreams come true, and he's always well set for that. But I think the thing with Onana is he was bought on quite a small sample size, really, off the back of a really excellent season at Inter. But of course, he had an up and down time at Ajax. He had the drugs ban, lost his place. His contract was running out, and they really wanted to move on from him. And then off the back of that one season at Inter, it allowed them to make a huge profit, obviously. And United leapt before they looked a little bit in terms of Onana, particularly as Ten Hag knew him fairly well, I suppose. But Carnesecchi, I think, has got everything it takes to be a very successful goalkeeper in the Premier League. I guess the question is, how patient are United prepared to be? Because I think you find, especially with defenders and goalkeepers, playing in the Premier League is a different game. I think in terms of speed, in terms of the physical side of it. So there's got to be a reasonable amount of time for him to adapt. I guess with United, you could argue that they are going into a sort of transitional season. Maybe that's not what United fans want to hear, but clearly, as we said, they need to get on the training pitch and do a load of work. And maybe that is the time to bet in someone new who's got an enormous upside. And clearly the model for a lot of clubs now is to get someone on board. And Mbeumo's not old either. That if it doesn't work out for United or for the player for whatever reason, they'll be able to sell them on and get most of their money back. And of course, that's not the situation that they're in at the moment, with lots of players that they'd like to sell who are on absolutely massive wages. They find it really hard to shift.
Yeah, you mentioned he's good at getting low into the corners, shot stopping. Often we've seen Premier League clubs go for goalkeepers, well, nowadays especially, who are good with their feet. Is he someone who is good with his feet? I mean, that's why United brought in Onana, but is he someone who plays out a lot and is able to do that?
Yeah, he is. Carnesecchi's good with his feet, and he has to be, because Atalanta want to play neat and tidy football, or they did under Gianpiero Gasperini anyway. So I think it's not just that. I think we can think of distribution as just being the feet, but he's a very accurate thrower of the ball as well. And I think United fans who still get a bit misty-eyed over Peter Schmeichel, that's probably quite a nice thing to hear as well. So look, that side of him's completely important. That's clearly why United moved on from David De Gea in the first place, a player who is a little bit lamented because a lot of United fans had a great deal of affection for him. Clearly, he's gone on to rebuild his career really nicely at Fiorentina, but they do need that kind of goalkeeper, and if they get Carnesecchi, that's what they'll get.
United, are they edging closer to getting their second signing of the summer then?
Well, there was a development last night, Hayley. They've made an improved offer of more than £60 million for Bryan Mbeumo. We know they had a bid rejected a few weeks ago, around £45 million plus £10 million in add-ons. We will wait to see if this latest offer will be enough to prize a player away who was absolutely phenomenal under Thomas Frank last season. But Thomas Frank maybe being the key name there. He's no longer going to be the Brentford head coach, of course. He is at Tottenham. Tottenham showed interest, but it does look like if Brentford accept that offer, he will be heading to Old Trafford. And what a season he had last season. We talk about the lack of goal threat from Manchester United under Ruben Amorim last season. He really wants to add to that attacking front line. Of course, they've got Matheus Cunha coming in, but 20 goals last season is ever so impressive. Expected assists first as well. He got 7 assists in the end last season, so a phenomenal season for him for Brentford. Can he match those numbers at Manchester United? If he joins the club, we'll wait and see. Yeah,
because we did think maybe he could be linking up with, of course, Thomas Frank. He could have been going to Tottenham. They wanted him, but who can they maybe turn their attentions to?
Well, there's certainly some real talent still Tottenham are looking at. He was one of a number of players Spurs have discussed ahead of the new season. Anton Semenyo is one name we know that's a player they like. Ebi Eze from Crystal Palace is a player they also like as well, and with reason. He's been absolutely phenomenal for Crystal Palace over the last few seasons. Starring role in the FA Cup final. Look, it's not going to be easy to prize away Eze from Crystal Palace. They've just won the FA Cup. It looks like they should be in Europe now under Oliver Glasner, so we'll wait and see. Is it around 65, 70 million to prize him away? But nothing developing massively yet at the moment, but we know it's a player of interest to them.
OK, good to know.
Bryan Mbeumo's move to Manchester United is edging closer after the club submitted a second bid worth around £60 million for the Brentford forward. Mbeumo has long been linked with a move to United, with the Cameroonian favouring Ruben Amorim's side over a reunion with Thomas Frank at Tottenham. United initially submitted a bid earlier this month totalling £45 million plus £10 million in add-ons. However, that was rejected by Brentford, who are in a strong bargaining position, with the club holding an option to extend Mbeumo's contract, which expires in June 2026, by an additional year. United have now come back with a second offer, which is closer to Brentford's valuation. The Bees want a fee close to the 62.5 million that United paid Wolves for Matheus Cunha. Brentford are hoping to negotiate easier add-ons from United, whose latest bid is worth 55 million up front with a further 5 million in add-ons, before sanctioning a deal from Mbeumo. While United remain the front-runners from Mbeumo, Brentford are understandably prepared to entertain a bidding war for their star forward. Mbeumo has enjoyed his best season in a Brentford shirt, scoring 20 Premier League goals and providing 8 assists. He struck up a prolific partnership with Yoane Wissa, with the pair netting 39 times in the league between them. The 25-year-old is keen to join United despite them finishing a lowly 15th last season. Amorim is looking for a winger, with the futures of all of Antony, Alejandro Garnacho and Marcus Rashford uncertain. Mbeumo's sale would constitute a club record departure for Brentford, who received 40 million from Al Ahly for striker Ivan Toney last summer. Mbeumo is not the only Brentford player linked